Hearties, to today's episode of Hearties Hotline. I am Cammie, the Hooked Hearty. You all know the lovely Sarah Nitch, the Hawk-Eyed Hearty. Today, we are talking about Season 3, Episode 8, Heartbreak. Okay, now this is not the question of the day. I want to make that very clear. But that was very, very aptly named. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of heartbreak going on in this. I mean, I think for a change, the only two people who aren't going through some kind of heartbreak are Jack and Elizabeth, for a change.
Well, I think even in a way, both of them, it's not a personal heartbreak, but they're both dealing with a lot of emotions in the situations that they're a part of.
Right. Yeah, but it's not their own personal heartbreak.
Right. But I think Jack is quite upset in his situation with what he's going through with Roy and Edith.
Oh, you can tell that it
I think you almost call that heartbreak because it does kind of, he lost his dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then Elizabeth is feeling Becky and Cody leaving very personally. But
I mean, personally as a teacher, and then also with Abigail being her best friend.
I just meant between the two of them.
There's absolutely
no heartbreak between the two of them.
Well, I mean, you got to have one episode.
Got to have one episode where everything's okay. At least between them. All right, but yeah, let's talk about that for a second. We've got Abigail's heartbreak, and we've got Cody and Becky's heartbreak. We've got Edith's heartbreak. We don't really have any heartbreak as far as Faith is concerned. She's getting over Peter by this time, but you can still see, you don't see it in this episode, but you know that there's still residual stuff.
Yes.
And you've got let me see, am I missing anybody? Roy's going through his own heartbreak, reliving memories and all of that. And Lee and Rosemary, they're going through heartbreak of their own. And
I don't think there's any episode in which Lee seems more bummed out. Like, bummed out. Just genuinely just like, what else could go wrong?
Yeah, because once he finally closes down the sawmill, then we're going to add on to that with Rosemary leaving.
Yeah.
And we don't see this part, but he gets the sawmill back, but then Rosemary is still leaving. And so it takes him until the very end of the episode to get through all that. And Rosemary's trying to figure out what she's going to do, and that's causing her some heartbreak. And poor Wade, he gets his heart broken, and so does Tommy Northridge.
Yeah, almost breaks a few other things, but
yeah. What do you want, Wade? Do you want a broken leg or do you want a broken heart?
Yeah, a lot of heartbreak. You are right.
We got a lot. Got a whole lot. Okay, so two things that I want to call attention to very quickly is, number one, this is the very first appearance of Mr. Jenkins.
Yes.
Played by the awesome Milo Shandell. He is somebody that I've talked to several times, and he's an absolute delight. So every time I see him on screen, I just think, oh, there he is. So this is his first time appearing in When Calls the Heart, and we know we're going to see him many times later. And then number two, I saw this, but Sarah, you pointed it out before we started recording. What did you see?
Well, there was a different appearance by a main character. And I think if we just say a character that we normally see was a little bit more Cammy's cup of tea. I think many of our Parties Hotline viewers will know that I'm referring to Frank being clean shaven in this episode, because when you see him, you do a double take. You're like, that's Frank?
I know, and he doesn't say anything. And not only is he clean shaven, but he had a haircut too.
He cleans up nicely.
I still very nicely
feel like that's not the Frank we know. Like, no. I'm not going to say necessarily that I prefer one over the other. I think he looks nice both ways. I'm sure you prefer one way over the other.
Don't judge.
Not judging.
Don't jump to conclusions either.
But I do think that I just normalize him having some facial hair, because that is definitely what I'm used to Frank. With him. It's Frank.
Yeah.
So it was very surprising. And even knowing that I'd seen him that way before when I've watched this season, it took me by surprise again when he came on screen. I was like, oh, that's right.
Yeah, it did me too, actually. When I was rewatching this episode, I'm like, oh yeah, that's Frank. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he shaved that one time.
So I'm guessing it was for a different role that he had to film at the time, but we're going to be clever and we're going to say that he cleaned up to appear in court and it hasn't grown
very
back.
Likely to.
Yes.
That's very likely to. That's a good theory.
Thank you. We'll go with that. Yes. All right. So let's start with the person that he spends most of this episode consoling when he appears on the screen.
Yep.
Yeesh. This is hard. This is really, really hard because he says it. He says it the first time they're talking. Would living with their aunt be so bad? You know, and she's their closest relative. As far as she knows, they were being passed around and finally found a semi-permanent place to stay. The minute that she heard the news, she rushed back to continent from Europe. You know,
rushing is a little bit different back in those days, but yes, it was as soon as she could get there. I think there's a couple things you have to factor into this plot. One is that for me, it was the question mark that always was originally coming into my mind is the falling out between sisters. And so that really is what didn't sit well with me at first.
That the aunt would come to the rescue when
if the aunt seemed like she could be very judgmental.
Oh.
She was against Cody and Becky's mom marrying their dad. And so you just hear that there was animosity over that and that mom chose to, separate from her family, leave her family for this man. And by all accounts and purposes that we've heard about Cody and Becky's parents, they were good people and they were very much in love and they took very good care of their children. And dad was really smart, was an engineer and
very smart,
building bridges. So you kind of just naturally kind of go on their side of things without hearing more of Caroline's side of things. So it just kind of sits uneasy that, okay, here she was against their parents being together, so much so that she didn't have any more contact with her sister, didn't even know she had a niece and nephew. Right. And so if that was Cody and Becky's parents' wishes, they didn't necessarily want Cody and Becky to be raised by their family.
Yeah, that's a good point. In the beginning, it sounds innocent enough.
Right.
You start to
it just has that icky
slight edge,
where you're just like, I don't know that this is what their parents would have wanted.
Yeah. And then here's what bothers me. Throughout the whole episode until the very end, she has no concept of her being wrong.
I agree.
You told Abigail that you were going to let her tell the children, and then you just show up because there was nothing to do with the hotel.
That was clearly a line. I agreed with what Caroline said after that, that she believes, anyway, she believes that she has every right to do that because she is their aunt, she is their guardian, she is the natural person that should get them.
Mhm.
And she doesn't know the history. She doesn't know what Abigail's been through with them. She doesn't know that this person is actually really close with these children. And she genuinely was surprised that Cody was upset because she didn't know those things. In her mind, where she's coming from, these children have lost their parents, they don't have anybody, and they've been shuffled around, and now she's coming in to save them. And she's not expecting, and I might add, nothing else about Caroline is ever mentioned. I assume that she doesn't have any children.
That's what I'm assuming.
And so she doesn't have experience with children, most likely, and doesn't kind of understand child development and how they would probably be, like, she probably realized they'd be upset at the situation of losing their parents, but not necessarily that anything about her swooping in and taking them off to this lavish lifestyle, you know, she doesn't see how any of that could be negative based on her upbringing and what she's able to offer them, which I can see from her point of view that she's thinking she's doing this amazing, wonderful thing. And so I can understand from that point of view. And I also can see, whereas if Abigail was some random person assigned by the court to watch over these children, that there is no reason to give her a lot of leeway. She's not, you know, I can see where she's like, it's my responsibility. I need to make these decisions for these children. I'm now going to be their legal guardian, and I need to start doing all the things.
See, I can see all of that. I have a problem with her agreeing to let Abigail break the news to them first, so it's not a shock, and then Abigail shows up and she's already been there.
Yeah, no, I think
that's what I have a problem with.
My guess is that in that moment, being surprised and talking to Abigail, she probably intended, like, fully did intend to let her do that, and was like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And then when she was bored, I think she just did that thing where you're like, oh, well, this actually makes more sense, and didn't think about the consequences.
She didn't think.
I agree.
She didn't think. And that's the thing, is the whole episode, she is thinking with one singular perspective. And that is the part where it gets dicey. And, you know, she's not making room for anything else that the children are interested in. She's saying she's just a child, talking about Becky. She has no idea what she wants, when the kid is what? She's
probably
14.
She's probably is about 14, but she's probably not that much younger than Caroline's sister was when she fell in love with somebody who wasn't quite good enough for her family.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But
and if Caroline has been
it's not like she's 6 years old and she's saying, I want to be a circus performer, you know.
But that's probably how her parents treated Becky's mom.
That's very possible.
Is, no, we're not going to change our perspective. This is the way things are in our family. We are presented and we go through, and
we don't go to college.
Don't go to college, and we don't marry engineers.
We don't marry beneath our means. Okay, here's another thing. It took me this long to realize it, and Elizabeth doesn't make a big deal about it, But if you think about it, Caroline seriously insulted Elizabeth. She says, "Forgive me for being blunt, but intellect doesn't exactly attract a husband." And if Elizabeth had let that sit with her too long, that would have been incredibly insulting. You're talking to a single woman who is a teacher and who gave up the wealthy lifestyle to become a teacher. So that could have been, and she has been teaching her niece and nephew, Caroline's. Yeah. That could have been incredibly insulting if she let it sit with her too long.
I think she was insulted, and she just knew. I think she's just smart enough to know fighting back on something like that is not going to make a difference with somebody who has that type of opinion. And the way to help Cody and Becky is by appealing to Caroline in another way.
So she does the right thing. She says, "You belong here, Cody." And I love her reaction at the science fair, because she is so shocked that she is so proud of Becky. Yeah. And hearing it from a professional, if you will, the judge, saying, even if she doesn't win, which I see no reason why she won't, she has to go to a technical university to expand her talent. Oh, talent? What? You know?
Well, I think when you hear that from multiple people and see that it's not just a small town teacher who's like, oh, she's
something
really
gets through,
you know, and that you're talking about somebody who they're saying that Becky could win this in a regional contest against boys. That's a little bit different. That makes it stand out a little bit more.
And, you know, she did another incredible thing. So first of all, she gives up Cody to live with Abigail. And then she says to Becky, "You can stay here," which means the world to Becky. And then, even if you don't win, your uncle and I will pay to send you to the finest school in the country. So it's not like she's saying, okay, fine, you want him, plop, you got him, bye.
Yeah.
You know, she is still going to be a part of their lives. And Abigail smooths it over the rest of the way, I think, when she says, "I hope you'll come and visit." And Caroline says, "I'd love to." I'm like, "Oh, your family, you're welcome anytime." Because that's the way Abigail is. That's the kind of person that she is. And she's going to be open and welcoming, even when she comes up against somebody who is short-sighted. Let's go a little deeper into the science fair for a second. So
I wish we'd seen more projects. I wish we'd been able to like have a little more time at the science fair.
That is true. But we get the cutest part of the science fair. When I grow up, I'm going to be a bear doctor.
I loved Faith's response too. Like, "Oh, you must mean a veterinarian."
No, bear doctor. And then rather than correcting her.
Exactly. At that point, you're just like, gotcha.
Got it. But then when Becky is announced as the winner, and I love the judge's reaction. This is college level work. You didn't help her? Oh, when the teacher says, "No, I didn't help her," and then she's doing college level work. I think also this is another place where Caroline realized the effect that Hope Valley had on Becky. She's seeing it on Cody, but she's really seeing it on Becky, because not only did she win the science fair, she walked to the front to have her picture taken. She finally got that motivation. And oh, Opal. So sweet, because in Opal's mind, she thinks that Becky is too nervous to go up. not that she's too nervous to get out of the chair and walk.
Yeah.
And I'll go with you if you're scared. And the smile that Becky gives her, it's a sweet moment right there.
It really is.
It really is. And then Becky very slowly but assuredly makes it up there, and she gets her picture taken for the newspaper.
So, yeah. Mm.
It's triumphant. It really is. It's so triumphant.
It's just, I mean, a lot of period shows, you have kind of that, oh, this is the proper thing for girls to do, like Aunt Caroline was trying to do with her, and
Right.
that, you know, what do they really want? What does she want to do? But this was just such a twist. I really enjoyed how they set this up, and really showed that it was not even just about what she wants to do, but just what she is, almost what she's born to do. She's been learning from her father since she was very little.
Yeah.
And absorbing all of this information. And maybe that will help Caroline to see her sister's choices in a better light as well.
I hope so. Because she doesn't wish to speak ill of the children's father.
But clearly she thinks a little bit.
A little bit. It's a win for everyone because Caroline is not leaving their lives. She's still going to be involved with them. And we hear in later episodes that they spend time with her, that Becky actually goes and spends time with her. And then, you know, Becky and Cody get to stay where they are and thrive. Then Becky, of course, she wins the science fair. And so even if she doesn't win the entire scholarship, she's still going to school where she'll thrive.
Yeah.
And, you know, and Becky and Cody, will you come back and visit me when you're not in school? Of course I will. You're my brother. So it's a win. And then of course, Abigail, she gets to be a mother again. So it's a win for everybody.
Yeah. Oh, so heartbreak that ends up being mended a little bit.
Yeah. Now let's talk about another triumph. This man had 2 triumphs in this episode. And he starts out as almost as low as you can go. He's not financially ruined, but it's going there.
Right.
And okay. Question of the day right here.
I'm ready.
Why did Wade do it?
Oh, that's a good question. Money.
I mean, that has to be the only reason. When you see him talking to Tommy Northridge, he does not look happy. Did you notice that when he's not gleeful that he is helping ruin Lee? He looks upset at himself, actually, but he takes the money nonetheless.
He looks pretty happy when Northridge implies that he's going to get a really cushy job.
That part, yeah.
He looks like, okay, maybe that's worth it.
Yeah, but you get that for about a microsecond before.
You know, it seems like one of those situations in TV and movies where, you know, he didn't have any qualms when he got into this mess because it was all about the money and nothing personal and opportunity for him to further himself. And now he's been working with Lee and he knows him and he knows all the workers. And
do you think he regretted it?
And he sees how hard Lee is working to take care of his men. Mm-hmm. It's yes, of course, Lee's upset about his business, but that's not what he's talking about. That's not what he's trying to solve. He's trying to solve, how do I take care of my men through this? And I think when you see something like that, he had to have had at least a little bit of a guilty conscience that, you know, here's this guy who's actually just trying to take care.
Boss.
Yeah, he's trying to be a good boss. He's trying to absorb the financial burden so that it's not a burden on other people. Mm-hmm. so that these people that have families can feed their families. You know, it kind of hits a little bit closer to home when you're seeing the people that it's affecting, and it's not just about a business going out of business.
Yeah.
It's about people not being able to feed their children.
Right.
And I think it might be a little bit that he's kind of starts to like Lee a little bit, but also just seeing that effect of what it actually does to the whole town is being affected by that. And I can see that there's a little bit of like, oh, am I doing the right thing?
Do you think he regretted it? I mean, obviously he regretted it because he got caught, but do you think that he regretted it?
It's tough to say. He had regrets. I don't know that if, you know, I don't know. He didn't strike me as the most regretful.
No, I mean, he ran.
I mean, what are you gonna do? I mean, okay, so you've been in this town for a while. You've got this pretty cushy job with Lee.
Let's talk about that. I mean, seriously, he had a good job. He was a trusted position. He was working right there with Lee. Lee was probably paying him really well.
I mean, in some ways, he was probably like, man, I probably would have made more in the long run to just do my job really well for Lee.
Probably.
But I mean, he seemed to, you know, really have high ambition for getting up there.
Buying the house next door to Elizabeth.
So, I mean, let's talk about this. There's a lot of emphasis in the previous couple of episodes on him being a little flirtatious with Elizabeth. If you are secretly sabotaging the largest employer in the city that you live in, why would you flirt with the lawman's girl? Come on, Wade.
Come on, Wade.
I don't feel like that was a smart move to begin with, because you automatically have Jack now not loving you.
No, and I mean, there's when Jack catches him, which by the way is the coolest sequence ever.
Right?
So, and we may have a bit of inside information on that point.
Yeah, we might.
Moving on, just for a moment,
We'll come back to that. Keep watching. We have
keep watching.
Interesting information coming soon.
But that is just that's one of the coolest captures in Jack's career in Hope Valley. I love it.
I mean, nothing is better than putting red tablecloths on a horse to me.
I said one.
I think there's a red surge over there. But yes, what I think is also really fun is think about that history with Wade. Not that he has seriously been jealous of him, but there's been that little bit of like, geez, stay away from my girl.
That's what I mean. You can see a little bit.
To then find out he's actually the bad guy you're after.
Vindication.
Yes. You can chase him down, and you can fling your gun and sweep his legs right out from under him. Be all dramatic.
And flip the gun and point it right at him.
And say something clever. What did he say?
Afraid you're out of a job.
Yes. And I bet he wanted to say more.
Oh, he probably did want to say more. And
now you don't get to live next to Elizabeth.
But I mean, you can see how mad he is, because not only was he messing with this girl, he was messing with Jack's best friend and the entire town. I mean, Jesse got let go from the mercantile because everybody had to cut back because the sawmill was closing. It affected everyone, just like you said.
Yeah, exactly. Not just the the employees at the mill, because
No.
that's such a big part of the town that it ends up affecting the whole economy. Another piece to that too is Gowan. So, and I think just a tiny bit, Jack was angry that he had been wrong, that they had, and this might even go into why Jack is a little bit more lenient with Gowan as we go forward. Here Gowan's this horrible guy who's done all these things in the first couple seasons. And here, this is kind of the first time that Bill and Jack go into this like, oh, well, it's Gowan.
Duh.
What else would it be? And then they find these railroad spikes in his car doing a lawful search, which means, I guess, Wade planted them there.
Yeah.
Which, good job, Wade, because I mean, you at least picked the most logical person to frame.
You got that part right.
Bonus points for that, at least. But here, Jack and Bill just believed it, because why wouldn't you? Even though if you think about it, like, okay, the car's just sitting there open.
Well, and
it's not like you have to pick a lock to get into it. It's open on the top.
And there were car tracks. I mean, Bill said it. We just assumed the car was Gowan's.
Yeah. But yeah, so here they find these and they arrest him. And then to find out, that they're wrong and that somebody, like, they feel duped, I imagine. Like, we really had blinders on and just assumed that this guy, because he's done something in the past, is doing it again. And I think that does influence Jack's approach with Gowan in the future.
Lee says it for the three of them. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think I owe Henry Gowan an apology.
Yeah.
All right. Second question of the day for you. Did you suspect Wade? Until Jenkins says Mr. Barrett put half of the down payment for the house, and that's why he got a loan. Did you suspect Wade?
No.
Me neither.
I was nervous because he was so flirtatious with Elizabeth. So I was like, oh, I don't know about this new character. I was like, what's he doing? But yeah, I didn't connect it to that. And I didn't, because, and again, like, you're seeing what they want you to see. They're pointing, when they're filming it, they're pointing all these fingers at Gowan, and what Gowan's capable of. So you're like, that's Gowan. When are they going to prove it? This is what we're watching, is a show to find the evidence against Gowan. So in a way, you're just like not realizing that, it's kind of one of those things where they're like, we're showing you this so you look over here and you're not seeing what's happening over here on this side.
And they're bringing so many new characters in for multiple episodes.
This season had a lot of like 3 episode, 4 episode characters.
Right. I'm talking about likelihood. It did not seem likely at all.
It didn't seem like they were giving clues that was it. And I don't think they were. I think they were trying to kind of make you not think of that as an option so they could surprise you with it, which surprised me.
He's good at being
good at that. Yeah. There's that. We have talked about that multiple times, but he's been in a lot of mysteries and stuff. So,
and on that note, announcement.
Can you tell that we're beating around the bush about something to do with Wade Barrett?
Next week, we have an interview with Wade Barrett himself, Mr. Matthew McCall.
Well, we can call him Matt. You and I can call him Matt.
We can call him Matt. You guys, you have to call him Matthew.
Said that's what his friends can call him. So
But he was so much fun. He was so giving, so generous with his time, and just a great conversationalist. We had a wonderful chat with him, so we are bringing that to you next week. So
Stay
tune
tuned.
in. Okay, now we have to go to Lee's second triumph because he got his sawmill back. He found out through Jack and Bill who the saboteur was, and all of that got resolved.
And my gosh, can you just imagine? Not only you've been through this professional trauma of, you know, almost losing your business and not knowing if you're going to be able to stay afloat, and you're trying to deal with this, you're trying to deal with a personal thing on the side with your girlfriend, and then you find out the person that was trying to ruin you and who was responsible for your foot being pretty badly injured was the person who you hired to be like your second in command, who you were trusting with everything.
Yeah.
Oh, I just can't, no, like, no wonder he just seemed like, I'm trying to think of a good word. What comes to mind is downtrodden. He was very downtrodden almost this whole episode.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. And we don't have enough time to go into that, and they didn't have enough time to go into it in the episode. But yeah, Lee was going through some serious stress in this episode, some very serious stress. And she says, I know shutting down the sawmill hasn't been easy. Rosemary says that to him. Seeing you helps a lot. Even when you're not yourself, you know exactly what to say. I'm not completely without charm, you know. I mean, he is the one that everyone comes to for all the answers, right?
Right.
And he had just gotten done asking Wade to see if there was a way that they could do advance pay for the crew. So he is trying to come up with all the answers. And then Lady Love walks in like, okay, put on the happy face. I'm happy to see you. And I'm trying really hard. Okay.
And then it just gets worse.
Yeah, it does. It does get worse. But
and I have to give him props. I cannot believe that he wasn't positive, but neutral. I can't believe he was as neutral as he was.
About Wade?
No, about
Rosemary going to
opportunity.
Hollywood.
About Rosemary's opportunity.
Yeah.
Because I am sure that on the inside, when he heard those words, he was crushed.
Well, you can see it.
Yeah.
You can see it in his face.
But he held it together so much more than I would expect anyone to, and he had the exact perfect response to her when she said, you know, I mean, she comes in, she's telling him that she's got this opportunity, but she would have to go and leave and film more movies in Hollywood. And, you know, he really doesn't answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she says, I would come back between pictures. It wouldn't be forever. You can't promise that.
Can't promise that.
And I mean, we see on his face, because Kevin's amazing. We see how hard it was for him to say that. I think you should do what makes you happy. And then, no, you can't promise that. Don't promise it. And you're not making this any easier. And, you know, I would have expected Lee to go, sorry, go. It'll be great. I would have expected Lee to do that.
And maybe he would have if he wasn't going through everything else.
Maybe.
I'm glad he was. Sorry, Lee. But this was the perfect response in saying the best I can do is not make it any harder.
Yeah.
Because that's what she needed to hear.
Yeah, because
she needed it to be firmly on herself to make a decision and for her to know what does she want in her life.
Well, and also he's making it very clear that he does not want her to go, but he's not going to stand in her way. So, no, I can't make it any easier. Sorry. Because the plain truth is, I don't want you to go, but I won't make it any harder on you by blubbering. And Princess Bride comes to mind. No bribe attempts or blubbering. Simply said, please.
I think that's one of my favorite lines. I mean, I say that about everything, but like that's just one that stands out.
Mm-hmm. It's
if
true.
you were to say like lines of Lee and Rosemary's relationship from all the seasons, even like that, to me, not only was very pivotal for them, but that just showed his strength of character, but in a very emotional way.
And then we have that heart to heart between Elizabeth and Rosemary. Okay, first hearty party I ever threw. This is what I did on the door. I put a sign in the middle of the door that said, "Your heart called you here." And then I put a bunch of hearts with all the ladies' names that were showing up to the party. And so that is where I got it, is from this line right here. Your heart called you here, Charlene. Your heart called you here, Jamie. Your heart called you here, Amanda. So.
Oh, well, and that's what you used on your blog.
Yeah, I said my heart called me here. Yeah. It's true. That's how that was one of my biggest taglines for my blog, was my heart called me here. So I owe it all to this episode. But Elizabeth really helps her talk things out. She started out being very supportive. For a future movie star, you don't look very happy. And then Rosemary decides it's a good time to confide in her that she's not sure what her dreams are anymore, and dreams can change. And
I think Elizabeth knew then what Rosemary was going to do, or what Rosemary should do.
Yeah, probably, because she brings up,
if you really wanted that, you wouldn't be questioning.
Well, and she brought up the romance with Jack. You came to Hope Valley in search of a romance, and you didn't care about being a star. It was more important to you. And I
love you're even happier and in an actual relationship with someone.
Shocking, right? But I loved Rosemary's reaction. She said, "That didn't go quite as I had hoped. Thanks to you, I recall." It was just fun.
It was one of the first really good friendship scenes between the two of them.
Yes, where nobody's dealing.
Exactly.
Yeah, nobody's dealing with anybody.
They're genuinely caring for each other.
Yeah, 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
And then, okay, big question right here. Have you heard them say "I love you" before this proposal? Because I didn't.
I thought there was one, but I don't know now. I thought there was one. I guess it was just how deeply I care for you, wasn't it?
That, or nobody's ever felt for you the way I do, or things like that. I've never.
Did they not get an "I love you"?
I don't think we got an "I love you" before the proposal.
I know they've said it since then.
Well, of course they've said it since then.
But I don't recall it ever being a big, the first "I love you." So it must just have supposedly happened off screen at some point. Oh,
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it because of how it was done. It was beautiful. This is one proposal that I am totally fine with them not having an "I love you" before it.
Here's my question.
Yes.
Since it happens off screen and it isn't said in the proposal, and given the way they lead up to the proposal and just how their relationship has been before the proposal, it's not really, I mean, they haven't had the hinting about marriage or anything remotely like some other characters in later seasons. Do you think that their off-screen I love yous was before or after the proposal?
I don't know.
I don't really feel like they said it before.
I would hope.
I mean, you
I
kind
would
of
hope that they would have exchanged I love yous
Right.
before he took that step. But
I feel like the way their relationship has gone,
it may not have happened.
It may not have happened, and that I feel like that was more common back then.
Yeah.
To not always say that first and have
it's very
that
true.
really be the symbol of that I love you because I'm asking you this, and then I'll tell you later.
That's really interesting, especially because of how casually the conversation starts. You know, we have the camera pan down and it has the wedding march in the background and her just sitting there.
Have you ever seen such a casual conversation with a wedding dress?
It's actually quite funny.
It's hilarious. That's like my favorite. It's not my favorite proposal, but it's my favorite like
situation.
Proposal situation. Like when you're just like, what's like a really weird proposal you've seen in a movie? Like that's it.
Well, and he comes up. Okay, so this is my take. I do not think that he was intending on proposing when he walked up.
I don't think so either.
Because he says
he would have had a ring. He would have had, even if it wasn't like a fancy formal engagement ring that he ordered and everything, like if he'd even thought he was going to, he would have found something. He's a man of tradition and formality. He would have gotten something.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, he says, hey, where's the movie crew? You know, so
coming by to check on her and see her.
Yeah. And then he sees the long face, but she says, my future is here. And then she adds on with you. And do you think that's
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I do feel like he may have I don't know that it was 100% like spontaneous. He may have been in the back of his mind like, man, I was getting really close to proposing. If she decides to stay, I think that we're there, you know, and then she did.
Well, and you see the change in his countenance when he says, you really mean that? And she says,
that's
my heart. Okay.
Yeah. That's when he's like, yes, I'm doing this now.
Does it so well. Okay, I have to tell you, if my husband had proposed to me this way, I would not have minded. You know, changing the names to have more modern references, but this is the perfect way to propose to an actor.
Right? Yes.
It's so perfect.
I mean, and in that situation, given what had just gone down,
it's
and that she's turning down a dream of hers for a new dream
because she's reluctant. Do you think they did that on purpose? I think they may have. Do you think?
Oh yeah, I mean that was a very clever name, and the only thing, because I know that's not necessarily the dress they use later, so I'm like,
not. So where did that go?
I love that she's like, but I get to keep the dress.
So why didn't she use it?
Especially when they were like needing fabric and all of that. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
But like, There was
But
like, where's this extra dress? Or did you save it? Like in season 5, they need a wedding dress. I'm like, where did this extra hidden wedding dress go?
but I do want to read this because of course I wrote it down.
Of course.
I'm not a big time director like Tobias Pope or a fancy producer like James Addison, but there is another role I think you'd be perfect for. And she's still being coy. I don't think she was
didn't know.
expecting this.
No.
No. And what kind of role? Plop down on the knee. Rosemary Laveau, will you be my wife? To her going, it's just.
I don't think he surprised Rosemary very much. So I think it's a really good thing he didn't plan something, because I think she would have figured it out.
Yes, 100% she would have figured it out. And it was the most perfect way to end the episode. Because when Elizabeth starts talking and she's writing in her journal, I thought that was it. And maybe they would save the next part for the next episode, because they usually end it with her talking.
Right.
But then here comes this extra scene, and you know that every Hardy is just going.
I mean, it hit so much better. It was really the best way to end that episode. I'm glad it was included in that story.
I mean, it's called When Calls the Heart for a reason, people.
You can't have an episode called Heartbreak and have the entire thing fully be heart. Like, you have to wrap something up. Some of it can stay up in the air, but you can't leave everything up in the air. You have to tie something up.
You have to mend things. You have to mend the heartbreak too. And speaking of mending, there is another very, very sweet mending that happens here in this episode. There's so much heartbreak, but there's so much mending.
Right.
I mean, by the end of the episode, you just can't help but sigh, because
you've been on a journey.
Yeah. And all's right with the world again, you know. Jack and Elizabeth are doing well, and they're having their flirty banter, you know. You let me read what you have so far, and I will cook you dinner. And I bet I'm a better cook than Mountie Theodore. And
oh my goodness.
And then Elizabeth, you know, she says that the leading lady is very handy with a pistol, an excellent horsewoman, her hair never gets messy, and she has a great talent for whittling. Jack, she sounds like the perfect woman, but she has to have but she has to have a weakness. She has one, Mountie Theodore. It's just, you know, that is one of the reasons I love season 3 so much. You have all of these sweet, calm scenes that show that Elizabeth and Jack are progressing, but they don't need these big, huge moments to make them progress.
No, I think having normal everyday life happen is what makes that season pretty beautiful.
Yeah. Well, and
knowing that things aren't always so lovely afterwards, after this season, I think it's really lovely to have that.
To go back and watch.
Appreciated it.
Yeah.
You know, because when it's live, you're watching it and you're looking forward to the future. You're like, just get engaged already, just get married already.
Yeah.
But when you know that whole story, and the whole story beginning to end, it's like you can go back and really savor those and go, weren't those just beautiful?
Yeah. Well, and him just quietly encouraging her to keep going with her writing. You know, I mean, that's priceless right there.
Yeah. I think so often she's thought about as the teacher on the show, which obviously she is, but I really do. I'm loving seeing in the newer seasons how she's the writer also. Yeah. And being able to trace that back to those early days and how she was, you know, encouraged early on when, you know, that's the stage where if you don't get that encouragement, you don't pursue it. You don't keep going and trying.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, that wasn't even what we were trying to talk about. Anyway.
Oh no, we weren't even going there, but it's a lovely tangent. No, we are talking about the lovely Samson family being reunited, Roy, Edith, and Oliver. And if you missed it, last week we had a fabulous conversation with Madison Smith, who played Roy. So you can get all the juicy background and behind the scenes details.
So many behind the scenes details. Oh,
tons,
yes.
Tons. He has an impeccable memory.
He does.
He has a very impeccable memory.
Yeah.
So yes, go find that on our channel. It was so much fun talking to Madison, and you'll hear why. I don't even have to tell you. You'll hear why.
So much fun.
But I do love, and we already said, we just have to talk about the fact that he comes back. And, you know, after saying things like, it's too late now, what's the point? And, you know, I love that Jack just pulls the locket. Here's the point. And just,
yeah, your son.
Because he doesn't want what happened to him to happen to Oliver. And, you know, I remember Madison saying that he was just so enthralled with the beautiful baby that, you know, he was just looking at the baby, no acting needed. And
right, which is great because you're supposed to be enthralled meeting your kid.
Right.
So it worked out really well.
So he let that sweet moment happen between Edith and Jack, and he's just focused on the baby, which we found out was played by a baby girl, which is so, but boy, that baby girl was precious. Yeah. I took a closer look at her this time, and because I was usually more focused on watching them, and I was like, oh man, she's beautiful.
And it's not often, especially when you have a scene where you're really just getting a close-up of a baby. It's not always all that common that there is actually a baby on set during the whole filming of a scene.
Right.
And so it just makes it that much more realistic that they were able to do that and have that really great real reaction from Madison as dad meeting his son, because that wouldn't have been quite the same if they were just pretending to hold a baby there.
Yeah. So I have said this, I said it in the Madison interview, but I think that what ended up getting Roy in the end was the man upstairs thinks you can, or he wouldn't have given you the chance. Do you agree, or is there another line that you think got him?
No, I think that line got him. Because he had zero faith in himself.
Yeah.
Based on the trauma he experienced as a child from his own father.
Yeah. And
he literally couldn't even imagine a way in which he could do better. Mm-hmm. And so to hear that there's, I mean, not a person, but to hear that there's anyone with faith in you, to give you the chance to try.
And then to come and say, I know I did wrong, but can you forgive me? I want us to be a family. I can't promise I'll be good at it. You don't have to promise. It's
Yeah, no, I think that storyline is often overlooked because it wasn't as crucial to Hope Valley.
Yeah.
And the characters, weren't around for a really long time. But I think that was a very poignant storyline that really hit Jack really, really heavily.
Yeah.
And also impacted Faith and her decision to even be in Hope Valley.
Because she was the one who knew what was wrong with Oliver.
Yeah.
And she keeps, and even in this episode, she's telling Edith to take care of herself. I'm used to hard work. Even so, you need to take care of yourself. She's still looking out for these people. I think that they were almost kind of pet patients.
Well, and her friendship with Jack, she's the one that told Jack, Faith is the one that told Jack, sometimes it takes more than words to get through to someone. And that's what gives him the idea to show the photograph of baby Oliver to Roy.
Right next to the picture of Roy himself.
Yeah. Even though that wasn't an actual picture of Madison.
It was a spliced picture of Madison. So go find out, if you don't already know, go find out the secret behind that, because that is a really interesting story. But that is where we leave you for tonight. There was a lot of heartbreak in this episode, but everything was mended. And the only
except for poor Wade's reputation.
Yeah. Wade and Tommy Northridge, their hearts were not mended. Neither was Gowan's at this point. And
semi-vindicated a little bit.
Yeah. So Gowan's heart is still a little in the black, if you will.
Analogy's getting weird. Okay.
And Nora's a little, because she doesn't quite know what to think. She doesn't quite know what to think. Is Bill being vindictive, or is Henry being vindictive? She doesn't know what to think yet. But at least she's not acting insane. So that's good.
She's toned it down a little bit this season.
Toned it down a whole lot. So we will see you next week for the what, Sarah?
Matthew McCall interview.
The Matthew McCall interview. You guys are going to love it. You really will. And there may be a few other subjects besides just When Calls the Heart.
He's a very talented actor.
He's a very talented actor. Sarah especially thinks so.
We'll leave it at that.
We're gonna say one more thing. Yeah.
Oh, are we?
So Sarah getting to interview Matthew McCall is like me getting to interview Daniel Lissing. That's still on the bucket list. We can get it. Yeah.
It's on the bucket list for you there.
It was, yeah. It was,
but this was pretty big for me.
It was
Cammy knows he's right up there. I need to find a GIF with him so that it can be a little bit higher on my list, but I haven't found any great Matthew McCall GIFs. If you guys have some, tweet them to me.
Yes. Tweet them to her so she can start using them on me all the time.
if anyone can make one in which he says, "Believe me, I know," that would be the clincher. If it was, challenge extended. Come on, Hearties, help me out here.
None of his characters say "Believe me, I know" in anything we've seen him in.
There has got to be a spot where he says "Believe me." There's got to be in something in Haley Dean, or no, he has to say it in Aurora Teagarden. I bet he says "Believe me" in Aurora.
I don't think he does, but
he might say like, "You have to believe me" or something like that.
Okay. Well, maybe.
On
all right, guys.
Here.
Yeah, pull through for Sarah here. And in the meantime, we will bid you so long, farewell, and have a great week.
Bye, Hearties.